And welcome everyone to Bullets,
Bourbon,
and Karate. And this week's episode is
Prayer of the Rollerboys.
Day of the Rope, Day of the Rope, Day of the Rope.
Rollerboys rule, Rollerboys rule.
Rollerboys was a major movie for me when I was growing up. I used to watch it all the time, and I rewatched it for the first time for this podcast, and I had no memory of how racist this movie is.
Yeah,
I didn't think, I had no memory that the Prayer of the Rollerboys, where the Rollerboys were basically a neo-Nazi sub-faction group. I had no recollection of this.
They are rooted in terrorism.
Racist terrorism.
Yeah.
And I mean, the plot of this movie is dark.
It is, but for a kind of punky, into the world kind of thing, very enjoyable.
I was about to say, my next question was going to be, Marcus, is this a good movie?
It's a good movie. It's a good movie. Not a great movie. I don't think, and kind of kicking it off here with your thoughts, jumping into it, this was my first time seeing it. I had thought that I remembered seeing parts of this when we talked about watching it, and I was excited too because, I get to go back and kind of remember what I'd watched when I was a kid. I totally remembered something more lighthearted and fun and good times throughout. Boy gets the girl. I had nothing with Mist and Death and
Were you thinking
Bullwinkle
of the movie
and
Airborne?
No, I would not get Airborne confused with this. I don't know what it was. It could have been something. It could have been an image of Gleaming the Cube. I mean, I remember Gleaming the Cube, but it could have been something to that effect.
Corey Haim and Slater resemble each other a great deal in both of these movies, with the bandanas and the spiky retro punk hair. I'm Adam Archer.
I'm Mark Hall.
And this is Bullets, Bourbon, and Karate, where every week we try to bring you a movie that we love, that's important to us, and most importantly, an action movie of some sort. And this week we've done it with Prayer of the Rollerboys, released in 1990, starring Corey Haim and a very young Patricia Arquette, which is fun.
Yeah. Very cute. How old was she during this? Do you remember?
22, I think, is what I saw.
Okay.
And Corey Haim was 19.
Wow.
So, before we get into it, you can find us on social media at BB Karate Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, and on our Gmail, bbkaratepodcast@gmail.com. It's all the same. Hit us up. Let us know what you got going on. Let us know what movies we should do.
Yes, please. You can also find us on Facebook at Bullets, Bourbon, and Karate as well. And as always, we'll do it real quick. Just give us 5 stars. Let's stop talking about it. We talk about it every week. Just do it. Go give us 5 stars. Let's get into the movie.
Let's get into the movie. We're done with that. And let's go ahead and get into this part of it. We're Bullets, Bourbon, and Karate, which means every week we pair our movie with a drink of our choice. Yes. And this week we have paired it with a... You suggested this, Marcus, and it fits on so many levels.
Yeah.
That I didn't really even realize it.
Right, with Corey, kind of with the country in the movie, kind of with the United States and other countries evolving, and then also with Mist.
With Mist, the drug of choice in the movie, and I gotta say, there's nothing I love more in a movie than when there's this imaginary drug that's just taken over the streets.
Yeah, I was trying to think of what was the drug called in RoboCop 2 that they used.
Yeah, or the drug in Showdown Little Tokyo.
Yeah.
Which is basically crystal meth, I guess.
Right.
But anyway, we've paired it with Canadian Mist.
Oh, our brothers from the north.
They're brothers from the north. Canadian whiskey. It is a subpar Canadian whiskey, below Canadian Club, in my opinion. If you're a big Canadian Mist fan, God bless you. But Corey Haim is a Canadian actor. So there we got that. And of course, The Mist.
Yeah,
The Mist is the drug of choice in this movie.
It is. Totally manufactured from colored sand. and different colors, and then stuff that'll make you sterile. But it looks like a good process. Bango explains the process very well, and
Canadian Club was a big thing. Canadian Club and Canadian whiskey in general was pretty major during the Prohibition era because it could be transported illegally from Canada into Chicago via the lakes, the Great Lakes.
Right.
And so we would get a lot of Canadian whiskey under cloak and dagger scenarios where we would get it and we would have all the joints and the speakeasies fed with Canadian whiskey here in Chicago. So there's a fun fact. And we thank them for sponsoring this show.
Yeah, thank you, Canada and Canadian.
You know, if we could get one sponsor, I would love it if it was Canada Mist.
I would too. Either Schlitz or Canadian Mist.
Yeah. Just sort of that low stuff, you know, and passable, but not wonderful.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how a lot of these movies are to a lot of people. Anyway, so with Canadian actor Corey Haim and with the mist in this movie, we have paired it with Canadian Mist. What do you think it should be paired with? We thought about Sierra Mist and vodka, but I think this is the better choice because we're Bullets Bourbon in karate, that's our stance on it. So, Rollerboys. You obviously have no past with this movie, do you, Mark?
I have no past. I mean, coming out in 1990, I was 11 years old, but yeah, I totally missed the boat on this one, man. I do remember. I mean, I remember the name when you said it. Like I know the name of it. I just had never gotten around to seeing it, and it's a little unfortunate because this could have changed the trajectory of my life. I think if I would have seen this at a younger age, I think I could have had a No Fear sponsorship as a rollerblader coming into 1992. For sure. Yeah,
for sure. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're right. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, my memories with this movie are mainly when it was being shown on, like, our Cinemax or whatever it was being shown on. My older sister had a crush on Corey Haim, and so it just came on a lot. And it made me want to rollerblade so bad. This movie and Airborne, you know, were the ones that made me think, wow. This is gonna be my trajectory in life,
right.
And because of this movie and Airborne, I began to rollerblade. And in the 6th grade, or coming out of the 5th into the 6th grade, I broke my radius and my ulna, my two bones in my wrist. And if you can imagine two bones sticking together, when they broke, they went like this, and they crossed each other and shot up. Luckily, it didn't break my skin, but it did break. And I wasn't even doing anything like exciting. I was literally rolling down a driveway, and the woman whose house it was pulling in, and I just stepped out of the way, and I guess one skate went into a hole, and I like flung myself. I don't know, I hit the momentum just right, and I remember like hitting the ground and sort of opening my eyes, and my wrist was right in front of me, and I was like, oh no!
And you knew it was broke right when it happened, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty large, like, baseball-sized lump in my wrist.
Yeah.
And it was like, and the woman was like, I was like, I broke my wrist. And she goes, are you sure? And I was like, yes, look at it.
Back in the 90s, parents were never, adults were always thinking you were being a drama queen about something.
You know, what do you really want? You want something? Right, you trying to sue me?
Yeah.
So that was to this day, my only broken bone. And I went to the emergency room, and I'm going to try to describe how they reset this bone thanks to Prayer of the Rollerboys. Now, I was 7 when this movie came out, so I wasn't watching it at prime time. I had seen it in the 90s, probably around the time it came out. But this movie made me interested in rollerblading, which eventually Airborne came out and made me extremely interested in it, and it rekindled it all. So when they took me to the emergency room, the worst part were the x-rays, because they have to move your arm around and get all the different angles, and that was just excruciating. Second worst part was when they had to numb my arm, and they inject whatever it is directly into the brake.
Yeah.
And then the third worst was, if you can imagine Chinese finger traps, and hanging from like an IV type apparatus.
Yeah.
Right? No, but not an IV. But
Right.
just like that tall metal thing in which IVs hang from. So these two Chinese finger traps are hanging. And what they have me do is they have me put my ring and middle finger in them, push up and then pull down. So my fingers are trapped in there.
Yeah.
Then they tie a bucket around my bicep, basically. And they fill it with fucking water. And it stretches my joint. And that's how they set my arm. Like I was in some type of medieval castle.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like it's, man, that...
And
it worked too? Like did it...
Yeah.
It worked great? Yeah. Does it hurt when it sets? Does it hurt bad too?
Yes. Oh, the pain was excruciating throughout the whole experience. I was just screaming the whole time. But when I explained this to other people, no one has ever had this done to them. I can't find another person who's ever had a bone set like this. And the doctor, the whole time I was screaming, I guess to try to distract me, would just bark at me. He would go, I swear to God, he would go, I'd be like, oh God, it hurts. And he'd go, woof, woof at him, woof. His name was Dr. Yarborough. I don't know why he would do it. He's like, just woof at him. And I think I remember him explaining that he was trying to distract me. But I had a cast on, and that was the break related to Prayer of the Rollerboys. When I was researching this movie, 1990, something interesting before we get too deep into the movie, and this can be kind of the nostalgia piece as well, because this movie so the idea of inline skates have been around since the 1700s. There have been similar things. Like I found, like in the early 1800s, someone was doing an opera, and it was supposed to look like they were ice skating, so they created these basically inline skates. But it wasn't until 1987, and there are all these different patents,
right?
But it wasn't until 1987 that the first patent for public consumption rollerblades was made. There had been like people who would on the speed skating and stuff like that. They had been using inline skates, but for Marcus to be able to go to, Dick's Sporting Goods and get a pair of inlines wasn't really possible until 1987, and that company was Rollerblade.
Yeah.
And I thought, much like Band-Aid, I just assumed all inline skates were just called rollerblades.
Right.
So because they did this, they cornered the market for like 5 or 6 years until there was like hardly any competition. Eventually there became some, but the recreational use of rollerblades only started 3 years before this movie. So you imagine, like, they're hot right now. Rollerblades just the hottest shit going right now.
That's just like that's catching lightning in a bottle for those 3 or 5 years, whatever. That just had to be good times, big Christmas parties every year.
You imagine just working for Rollerblade. You got pro rollerbladers coming in at your Christmas party.
Yeah.
Just cocaine on your rollerblades.
Oakleys and cocaine all day long.
You imagine. And they were probably like extreme sporters of some sort. Like, I just picture the Nakatomi party.
Yeah.
But with half pipes.
Yeah. And I picture just Eric Nies showing up at every party that you have there too.
Yeah. So let's start talking about it. There's not a lot of box office information because I don't believe this was ever. If it had any theatrical run, it must have been extremely brief because there's not really anything on it.
Yeah, there's no date, like a day of release. I mean, November 1990 is the release date, but that has to be for the video release for that. Because I could not find anything as far as budget, as far as revenue that it gained, anything like that, too. All we found were information for director and writer, which are big and we'll get into. But yeah, it's hard to come across anything as far as the number-wise for this, and seemingly so if it went straight to video, which I guess it had to.
It must have. Though it says, when I'm looking at his sort of videography here, if there was a movie that was sent straight to direct to video, it seems to be listed, and a lot of the movies that I thought were straight to video aren't listed as direct to video, but who knows. Maybe that means these movies were made with the intent to release